Welcome to The Actual Story, the official podcast of the National Agricultural Communicators of Tomorrow. I'm your host, Lydia Hill, and I, along with the rest of the National Officer team, are here to share the voices, ideas, and stories shaping the future of agriculture and communications. Whether you're a student, professional, or simply passionate about the industry, this is your place to connect, learn, and be inspired. So without further ado, let's dive into today's actual story. Yeah, Allie, let's just give us an introduction of yourself.
Okay, so my name is Allie Spears. I consider myself to be fourth generation involved in agriculture. Grew up on the farming and ranching side, but probably more the ranching side these days. But yeah, I'm from Northern California originally, moved to Texas to attend Texas A&M. Fell in love with the Lone Star State, never left, and have been here for 10 years and have done a lot of different things in a short amount of time. But really, I'd say like the big piece is probably the fact that my current role is an instructional assistant professor at A&M, specifically teaching in the AgCom and journalism program. And then I have a podcast called Ag Chicks, where I talk to women in agriculture.
Awesome. I love that. So, did you always know that you wanted to move to Texas?
No, good question. I did not. I thought that for college, I knew I wanted to leave California, but I thought I would end up back in California, which is kind of why I wanted to leave and do something different for 4 years, quote unquote, I guess you could say. But Texas was not really on my radar. I applied on a whim, had never even been to Texas, and visited the campus, and someone said howdy to me. I cried and I fell in love with Texas and said, these are my people, and haven't looked back since.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I kind of had the same experience with how I ended up down here in Georgia. So tell us a little bit about like your college career and how what you did in college led you to the position you're in right now.
Yes. So what my kind of undergrad background is not anywhere near where I am today. I studied ag business as my undergraduate and had kind of a thought that I might go to law school. I was involved in judging teams here at A&M, so the wool judging team, the livestock judging team, and then when I graduated, I did a long-term internship with the State Fair of Texas because I thought maybe I wanted to do something livestock show related because I grew up showing livestock. I found out that those people are very underappreciated that help to put on those shows. We need them to make sure that the livestock world functions, but I did not want to do that for the foreseeable future. So kind of switched gears, knew I loved College Station, and so started to kind of explore what opportunities there were back in College Station as far as careers went. And so that's kind of, I guess, what led me to a little bit. I have like a piece on for the in between as far as what I did right when I graduated, and then also to 7 years later to now. But I do think all of the things I did in college were subconsciously kind of guiding me in the direction that in the journey that I am now. I just probably didn't realize it at the time.
Yeah, I think like doing the experience, no matter what it is, it's either going to show you that you love or you hate whatever task you're doing. So I think that's pretty cool that you were able to figure that out.
Yeah, and sometimes the things figuring out what you don't like is just as important as figuring out what you do like.
Yeah, I totally agree. We all know that you're infamous for your podcast, Ag Chicks. I'm personally a big fan myself. What led you to start that podcast?
It was right in the peak of COVID. I was at home, working from home, working remotely. So spending a lot of time with just me and my two bloodhound dogs. So we were hanging out as a little pack, I guess, if you will. And I felt like I was so disconnected from my agricultural roots, and I wanted to get back to that, but I wasn't really sure how to do that with the role that I was in at that point in time. And so my boyfriend went fishing on a river here close to kind of where we live. And he called me one morning and said, hey, I found a calf and I'm not really sure what to do with her, but like there's a calf in the boat. Like what now? And so
Oh my
me,
goodness.
yeah, it was crazy. me, growing up with my ranching background, I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I've literally been training for my whole life. I will be there. I'm on my way. So we drove out, or I drove out to meet him, and we gave this little calf a bottle, and she sucked it right down. And so then we were kind of like, now what? So we loaded her up in the front seat of my truck, and I drove 45 minutes home with her in the front seat of my pickup. She snored. Like, I didn't even know cows could snore, but she snored the whole way home. And that was really the massive push I needed to really get back to what I loved in terms of my passion for agriculture. And so through having her and raising her and starting to share her on my own personal platforms, I realized the massive disconnect between producers and consumers and like people understanding where their food was coming from. And so in order to explore that and also just other potential career opportunities that were out there specifically for women in agriculture, I started asking questions, hopping on Zoom calls like this and hitting record. And then I realized that I was actually creating a podcast and decided then to create a brand and a platform for it and all of those things. And so it was like a very selfish start, I guess you could say, to the podcast. But it was definitely also a push from Willow, my COVID calf, I call her, to get back to what I was passionate about.
Yeah, I honestly having an experience like that, just like finding a calf on a boat, like I would never dream of that being like the very beginning of a podcast. But I really think that's awesome that you were able to have that experience and then turn it into something that's going to impact so many other people across the country.
Well, thank you. I didn't know at the time that's the direction it was all headed in, but it's definitely been a fun process.
I can imagine so. So how did you choose like specifically focusing on women in agriculture?
Yeah, great question. So I was about 6 episodes in. Originally, the podcast was called The Dirt, which I'm very glad I rebranded from that because I think that's a popular ag type focus area and title. But about 6 episodes in, I realized I had only talked to women in agriculture. And so I realized that there probably was something to that. Like, why was I leaning into that? So I kind of did some soul searching, and my connection piece was really that the mass majority of people in the grocery store who are making food purchasing decisions are women. And so if I could connect with them through telling the stories of women in agriculture, then that was going to be my connection piece and how I was going to try to begin to bridge this gap between, farm and food and plates and all that kind of thing. So that's why I decided women in agriculture. And that's kind of why I decided to go that route with my guests, but also my audience as well.
Yeah, that's really cool how you came to that conclusion. Um, I think there are a lot of gaps that need to be bridged in like the agricultural sector, whether it's between producers, consumers, whether it's between like researchers and the producers. So it's kind of hard to find that niche. So do you have like a specific example of when storytelling, just telling your story, whether on podcast or in the grocery store, buying your meals, can you tell me a story of what made like a real impact in bridging that educational gap?
Yeah, for me, I really think it's the story of Willow, which is kind of silly if you think about it, right? If we're thinking cattle producers in a large scope here, the worst possible situation is to have a calf that you have to raise with a bottle. However, the fact that that is probably not what you want, but then ended up being my way to connect to people that are not involved in agriculture is kind of funny if you think about it. And like I said, so I just started sharing her through my personal Instagram and Snapchat, and people who I went to high school with, or even teachers that I had had growing up, started to pay attention and they became obsessed with Willow. They wanted to know why I hadn't fed her yet that morning, like why I hadn't posted her bottle pictures yet. And so she kind of like turned, I mean, unknowingly to her, because she, although she is a complete and total diva, she was this like figure on social media that people were kind of obsessed with. I think a piece might have been people were looking for a positive in kind of a crazy and uncertain time. But that's probably the best example for me as far as storytelling goes, because at that point it really was, and not that it's not now, but it was very raw and like I had no idea the impact I was having. I was just posting stories because that's what I was doing that morning. And so that connection piece of connecting people through like emotion and a story that they can get behind, I think is really powerful, because it doesn't always have to be this massive, monologue that we create. I think it can be a very simple thing, but if people can connect with it, then you can get them to buy in.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like Willow's story, because she is special, like being a bottle calf, like not a lot of consumers know that if you have a mama that prolapses or something like that and she dies or she's not able to feed her calf, you have to do it or else you lose the calf as well. So I think spotlighting that area of the cattle industry was really cool as well. And it's not just a story of, all right, well, I have a production, it's cow calf, and I have about 200 head, and I feed them every day and I make sure they're bred to the right bull. I really think Willow's story is something more impactful from that. And now she's just a statement.
Right. Well, and I think too, it shows the an emotional side to agriculture too that people maybe don't connect with all the time. They can see, I got to get up early to feed her and make sure she's being taken care of and kind of serving as a surrogate mom in a weird way. And so I think it puts a human aspect to agriculture too.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do need that human emotional connection, especially these days where a lot of consumers and even producers, anybody who has some sort of technology, like they they have a disconnect, but they think they're actually connected because they're seeing it on a screen. But you were able to take that and really make them feel emotions with like yours and Willow's story. So does Willow have like any other siblings now? Like, do you have more cattle than just Willow now?
Yes, she thought she was a bloodhound for the first 2 years or year and a half of her life. Like she truly thought she was I have videos of her like wrestling with the dogs, which I'm like, cows are not supposed to do that. Like the fact that she could even pretend or interact in that way is kind of crazy to think about. But yes, since then we have added several calves, several heifers to the our small little Texas herd. Willow has had two calves of her own, and we're in the process of continuing to try to grow our little Texas herd. So yes, so she's not alone with just the dogs anymore.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. But I think like a lot of animals are like that. Like if you have a dog that's raised in a house with a bunch of cats, the dog is going to learn to act like a cat. I think that's so funny. I'm going to reel it back into the podcasting topic now. Um, I guess what's your process for brainstorming and making like an engaging episode?
Yeah, so I specifically pick my guests because they are what I think to be like an expert in a specific thing. So my approach is simply to be curious about whatever it is that they do. I have found that when I have a list of questions, that's all I'm focused on. And so my approach is maybe unconventional, but I know enough about them to be able to hold a conversation. But I don't go crazy in depth on my research side of things. I don't pre-create questions. I have found that the best episodes and the best formats for my particular audience is when I just have a very casual, very frank conversation with my guests. And that's where like the most magic, if you will, happens is just from a conversation where we're just acting like two friends chatting, or I'm acting very genuinely curious about whatever it is that person is doing because I truly am. And I'm kind of taking it from the point of, okay, if this person's an expert, what are all the things I can learn from them in the next 30 to 45 minutes? And that's
Right.
kind of my approach.
So, what about like the day of the podcast? Do you spend some time preparing before to get stuff ready, or do you just like get done with everything you have to do and you're like, oh, I need to record this podcast?
It's kind of ebbed and flowed. In the beginning, it was very much a like, I have to get in the right state of mind, kind of gear up for whatever I'm doing. I would do pretty intense research on the individual just to make sure I had like all the things right, all the names of all the things that they've done. I still do that to an extent. However, I have changed my like scheduling process. So right when I schedule my guests, when they pick the time that works best for them, I have them submit their bio that they would like me to use in conjunction with the episode. So that way too, I have that information and I record my intros before I do the episode. So that kind of puts me in the frame of mind of who am I talking to? What are the things that they want people to know about them based off of the bio that they provided? And then if I feel like I need any clarification, I'll kind of do a quick search, or maybe I'll look at the social media handles that they gave me and do like a scroll through things real quickly. But I'd say my prep is probably day of recording about 30 minutes beforehand. Now, that's not, like I said, that's been a process that has come
Yeah.
to me over the last 5 years. But that's kind of the point I've gotten today. Now, if it's someone who is in a part of the industry that I'm completely unfamiliar with, then maybe I'll do a little bit more research just to feel like I can ask questions that are have a little bit of validity, or so that I'm not wasting their time either, because I don't want to waste anybody's time. But if I the other biggest piece, I guess, is, and this is where the more casual and frank conversation part came through, is like I said, I was so focused on asking the next question that I wasn't listening to what the person was saying. And so when I started to listen to the person a little bit more, that's where questions sparked too. So then again, it kind of became this like exchange of conversation instead of a question answer type situation.
Yeah, I always seem to enjoy the podcast, like especially like yours that are very conversational. But 5 years is such a long time to come up with like engaging and fresh new content. How do you manage that?
That's a really good question, and it has gotten difficult. And you can probably tell if you scroll through dates of episodes where my life got a little bit hectic. The past 3.5 years, I guess, I've been working on my PhD, and so things have gotten a little bit more challenging through that process. But I just finished. I'm feeling refreshed and ready to dive back in. I do typically take off about a month around the holidays just because it's hard to schedule guests around that time frame, but also it allows myself to kind of get some more creative insight. And then I think just remaining curious about things helps me to, like, whatever I'm curious about, like that's the guest route I'm going to try to take. And so I think by me staying interested in my guests, that helps me to stay interested in the content side of things. That's probably more from like a podcast production standpoint. If we're talking more like social media content creation, that I have found harder to stay creative around, and you will definitely see that in my Instagram if you roll through that. That it used to be a very structured process for myself where I would plan content, schedule it, have like a content creation day. At this point in my journey, I'm definitely more of a when inspiration hits, that's when I'm going to take advantage of things. But I think you genuinely have to be interested in whatever you're talking about or whoever you're talking about. And then I call it like the podcast high. After I record an episode, I'm like on this like adrenaline rush. And so I try to capitalize on that feeling of creating content as fast as possible after that. After I finish the episode, as far as recording goes, because that's when I feel the most motivated and engaged to continue the word of whatever we were talking about.
Yeah. Um, I had a really good question and then I lost it. And now I'm very upset at myself.
I hate when I do that.
And I think that's so real in like as communicators, like if you're going to communicate about ag, I'm not saying you have to come from an ag background, but you need to at least be interested in it and eager to learn and curious, which I think is like the perfect adjective for it. Um, but I can only imagine like taking 5 years of trying to create fresh and new stuff. So I guess on that topic, have you ever battled with burnout trying to create new stuff?
Yeah, a lot of burnout from the podcast side of things and then also the content creation side of things. Uh, Recently, I kind of have put off coming back to the podcasting space a little bit and like the relaunch of season 5 for that exact reason of feeling like I was kind of stuck in this. I'm telling the same story. Obviously, every guest is super different and they have their own story, and I'm not trying to take away from that part, but I felt like content of the episodes was getting a little bit repetitive. And so I kind of took a step back and was like, how can I make this, again, engaging for the audience, obviously, but engaging for myself because I'm the one who's got to record and edit through all of this stuff and listen to it 10 times. And so I'm kind of changing my approach a little bit I've always gone after experts in whatever we're talking about, but I want to not only highlight individual stories, but then also highlight what they're an expert in and ask them more serious or deeper questions related to whatever that specific content area is that they are an expert in. And so I'm really hoping that that will kind of help to provide more details for audience and listeners, but also help engage myself a little bit too, as far as like, I've done this now for 5 years. Let's have a fresh kind of perspective and look on things moving into the next half of the season.
Yeah, for sure. When you get that sense of burnout in like podcasting, does that apply to strictly podcasting, or does it kind of affect, all of your other involvements? And how do you handle everything else you're involved in? Because you're a busy woman.
Yes, sometimes I wonder why I commit to all of the things I commit to, but in my mind, it all does connect back to all of the things I'm passionate about. And if I can connect it back, then I can feel like I can rationalize it for myself. But yeah, no, I think burnout is definitely a thing that a lot of people experience and a lot of people deal with in a professional setting, but also creative setting. And I feel like sometimes that in itself is kind of a piece of the burnout of trying to juggle this professional, like I have a job to do, but also I want to be creative and kind of explore these opportunities that I have in front of me as well. So I have this has been a learning process for sure, and I'm not an expert, but I've kind of figured out where my threshold is as far as commitments go and allowing myself like at the beginning of the month, I look at my calendar and I say, okay, what do I have to get done this month? What do I want to get done this month? And I kind of create columns and look at timing of commitments I've already done and figure out where things align and try to plug in as many want tos as possible, but obviously making sure that the need tos are taken care of first. And that's not, again, not a perfect system. It's helped a little bit because I was definitely doing a pretty equal side of needs and wants at several points in my life. So I feel like right now I have a better grasp on that. And then also when I am kind of feeling like I'm in a slump, like taking some time to just go outside and hang out with the cows, which sounds silly, but that's like my happy place. And so taking time to do the things that make me feel fulfilled at the end of the day is very important to make sure that I'm able to show up in other places of my life.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned a little bit about like prioritizing what needs to be done first. That's what I've really found useful for me because I stick to like this massive calendar, and sometimes I feel like I have to go by what's in order of the calendar. And if I get really overwhelmed, I tend to like sit down and write a list of okay, what needs to be done first and what can be done last. And so that's really helped me battle with stuff as well. Katrina is our communications coordinator for National ACT. We were just on a call and we were talking about like saying no to opportunities because when you're in
Mhm.
college, you have so many opportunities thrown at you. And last year I got here and I just wanted to say yes to everything. And then I had a ton of burnout by the end of the spring semester. So I started this semester with like a new approach. And I was like, I need to really prioritize what's going to benefit me in the long run. So I just had to turn down a really cool opportunity with our ag business club and that association because I know I wanted to do graduate research in the spring and I know I wouldn't be able to handle both. So I think being able to juggle all of that stuff, saying yes and no to things, I think that's really important.
Yeah, and when I do talks or get this question in regards to like how do you decide what to say yes to and what to say no to, again, that's something I've definitely struggled with, still struggle with. But I think if you can kind of figure out your why or your purpose, and I know that that sounds like a big question to navigate, but if you can kind of figure that out and be confident in whatever it is that your like end goal is in life or in the next 6 months, whatever it might be, or whatever it looks like for you, then it becomes a lot easier to figure out what aligns with that and what doesn't. And it becomes easier to say no to things that don't align with your bigger goal or bigger purpose that you're trying to work towards.
Yeah. So what is your why and your purpose?
Yes. So I have, um, for me, I always say that my why has to do with the fact that 2% of our population feeds 100% of our population, and the fact that uh, 98% of the population is very disconnected to where their food is coming from is a big reason that I'm so passionate about not only highlighting stories within agriculture, but then also trying to figure out how we can better obviously bridge the gap between the two groups, but also how agriculture can learn about consumers and be more equipped to have conversations surrounding things that we do, more transparency in the things that we do. And so I feel like that's, yes, it's a statistic, but that's why I decided to get my PhD. That's why I started the podcast. That's why I agreed to certain events to go speak at certain groups of people to discuss things with, because that at the end of the day is really what I'm kind of keeping as my why and what I'm working to help. Educate's probably not the right word, but work to bring more awareness to, I guess, maybe
Yeah.
at the end of the day.
Yeah, for sure. Especially as like a college student, it's really hard to figure out that why. And I think that's something a lot of college students, including myself, struggle with because you have all these million things being thrown at you at the same time. But now that you've been through school, you've seen a lot of the industry, and now you have your PhD. What are some skills that like you would recommend that are must-haves for like young professionals, maybe specifically communicators that they need to have before they go into a job?
For sure. I think one of the most underrated skill you can have as a communicator is to be a good listener. I think a lot of times communicators, right, we think, oh, I have to speak well, I have to be able to present my ideas and my thoughts in front of other people or get my message across, which is very important, don't get me wrong. However, I think a lot of times we worry more about what we're saying and not about what information is maybe coming into us. So I think being a really good listener helps you to be a better communicator because you have a better pulse on the things that are going on around you, but also the people that you're trying to potentially connect with or better understand. So I would say that's a massive thing. I would say don't, I know you just mentioned, right, that you said yes to everything because you wanted to take advantage of all the opportunities. And
Yes.
I would say that is, it's a hard kind of line to figure out of as far as like saying yes to opportunities, but also saying no to things that don't serve you. However, college is the one time where you can say yes to a crazy idea or a crazy opportunity and not have like a massive impact on life. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, but you don't have like a massive risk usually if you're gonna take the wrong internship. Okay, maybe you should have done a different one, but you probably still learned something. Maybe you decided what you didn't want to do. And so I would say it's a really good opportunity to take some of those risks that you maybe can't do if you are later in life, and have more responsibilities, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Try something out of the box that you would never think you would want to do something with individuals that you would never normally connect with. And I think that all helps you to build up skills that will be very helpful later in life.
Yeah. So key takeaways, be a good listener. I think that's really important as well. I really struggled with that, especially last year. I think that's something all communicators struggle with because, like you said, we're just trying to put out the information, but we're not taking in what the consumer actually wants to hear. So I think that's a big one. And then also just staying open minded, wanting to take advantage of the right opportunities. But if you get thrown into a situation where that's not the ideal place you want to be in the future, you still learn something from it. I think as college students, we struggle with that as well because taking internships is hard. Um, Sometimes a lot of organizations only want juniors and seniors, and that only gives you like 2 summers
Mhm.
to have those internships. And you can only do so much unless you're doing stuff during the regular fall and spring semesters. So I know that can be difficult as well. So what did you do in college for your internships?
So I'm such a huge internship proponent because I did not take advantage of internships as a college student, which is like exactly what you're not supposed to do, right? Um, because I was on the judging teams, this was just an excuse I told myself, right? Oh, I'm on the judging team. I don't need to do internships. That was wrong. And I have several students in my classes right now who are on the judging team and they've done internships and they have job offers. And I'm like, that's probably why I didn't have a job offer when I graduated, right? So I would say the internships are a massive piece. I did do an internship right after I graduated. I did an internship with a real estate company here in town to learn more about like the marketing side of things, and that's really kind of where my interest in this whole marketing and communication stuff really sprang from, I guess. And then my role with the State Fair of Texas as well. Um, so that would be my biggest piece of advice is do a study abroad if you can and do an internship because again, you won't ever get this time back in life to where you can make mistakes that are not like potential $1 million mistakes or you're
Yeah.
going to get fired based off of, so take advantage of that for sure.
Yeah. So was the internship not required for your major at the time?
It wasn't. And since then, they've implemented a lot of things to try to get students to take advantage of out of the classroom experiences, which I think is super beneficial because it's great to be a good student, but you got to have the real world aspect of everything as well as far as experience goes.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of classroom, what classes do you teach?
The classes I teach currently are a digital storytelling class, a emerging media, kind of social media focused class, PR and campaigns, and then also internships is kind of what, funny enough, right? Here's my karma
Yeah,
coming back to me. Now I'm teaching an internship class.
that's pretty cool. What's your, I'm sure you're not supposed to pick favorites, but what's your favorite class to teach out of all those?
I just had this conversation with someone and I said, this is not a good answer because I'm not answering your question fully, but I think each one has a little piece of like, this is my favorite part in that class. This is my favorite part in that class. So I really like the emerging media one because social media is kind of my jam. Um, I really like the PR and campaigns one because I'm learning a lot from just, the textbook and those types of things. And then I really like the digital storytelling class because it's a small class. There's only about 6 students in there right now. So we get to have really fun discussions and really fun activities kind of surrounding helping them craft their own story. So each one I'm enjoying in a different way.
Yeah, I think the digital storytelling one is pretty cool. And having a smaller class, like I would really have a good time connecting with who's teaching that class with
Yeah, it's
that.
been fun.
So are you not teaching anything like podcasting right now?
Not right now. We with the way our classes are set up right now, there's aspects of podcasting in all of them, but there's not necessarily like a podcasting class. It's just kind of like woven in. But it's on my radar and it's probably coming for the spring.
Nice, nice. I love to hear that. If you were to recommend like a starter out like software or tool to someone who wanted to get into podcasting, what would you recommend?
I think a lot of times people think they have to have all this crazy expensive equipment to start a podcast. And does that help? Absolutely. However, you can have a massive impact in a very low cost manner. I started out literally what you and I are doing right now on Zoom, did that for 4 years for the podcast. I edited in iMovie, which is free on my Mac. And kind of joke that I was a graduate of YouTube University. I taught myself a lot based off of YouTube videos. And so I think you can do things very low cost. Ways that I think you can step it up a little bit would be like I have transferred over now to using StreamYard, which is a recording platform very similar to Zoom, but has a lot more capabilities specifically surrounding interview type content like podcasting, obviously. Lots of kind of cool built in things that you can use. It helps with creating short form videos from long form videos. So that's very helpful. Um, CapCut is helpful as far as I can throw a long form video into that and it'll give me short form videos to use for social media purposes. I have a very fancy mic that I never use because I'm never at my home office to record. So I have little mini mics that I got off of Amazon, and sometimes that's the best I can do. And they're pretty good for being $12. So again, I think there's lots of very high end podcasting equipment that you can purchase. But don't not start because of that. There's lots of, you can do it for free for a very long time, or you can have just, $50 in and you can make even a little bit higher quality audio sound come through. AirPods are great too. They help with sound reduction and then also with the microphone aspect as well. So lots of like little cheap tricks too, to making the podcast a little bit better.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, or I can at least speak from my college's experience, a lot of people are intimidated by like the money factor of podcasting because they don't have the nice headphones and microphones. They don't want to pay like the annual fee for like a software or a subscription for anything. Um, but there definitely are more efficient ways to get it done if you're not willing to put that money into it quite yet and you just want to test it out. So, kind of on the subject of testing out podcasting, if someone were nervous, professional, student, anybody, about like putting their voice out there for whatever type of podcast they were doing, what advice would you give to them?
Everyone has an important story to tell. There's something that makes you uniquely you, and there's no way to share that about yourself or what you're maybe knowledgeable, oh my gosh, knowledgeable about. It's been a long day. Unless you put yourself out there. And you really never know. Maybe this is probably not the, maybe this will scare people even more, but you never know who's going to listen and who you might be able to connect with because you put yourself out there as a guest for a podcast or a host of a podcast. I've had so many people say like, "Hey, I heard you on this, like I found you through this," or I listened to your podcast, which is still to this 5 years in, and that's like crazy. I like little fangirl inside of me. I'm like, that's so cool. They listen to my podcast. Because at the end of the day, right, you're creating it for someone else, hopefully. And so if you don't share, then people are missing out on what you have to tell. And so everyone plays an important role. So you just gotta get outside your comfort zone a little bit.
Yeah, and I was gonna say something similar, like, everybody has that story, and you're not the only one, like, everybody has their own individual story, but you're not gonna be the only person on the planet who has that singular interest. There's always gonna be a group of people, you may just not have found them yet, and the way to find them may just be through a podcast. Um, that was my little tidbit of thoughts on that. Just don't be afraid if you feel like you're the only one with like an idea or opinions. There's going to be people who share those opinions with you, but they just haven't come out and said it yet.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I wanted to like do a little rapid fire question with you. So just like name off the first thing that comes to your head and we will go from there. Don't think about it too hard.
Okay. I'll do
All
my
right.
best.
Okay. If you could have any guest in the world, alive or past, on your podcast, who would it be?
That's hard. Right now, I think Brooke Rollins would be really cool to pick her brain
Oh,
about
yeah.
things.
Yeah, that would be really cool. That's a good answer. I was kind of brainstorming of like what you might would say to that, but that's a good
Who'd you think
one.
I would say?
Um, Temple Grandin.
Oh,
I
that's
was
a good one
expecting an
too.
answer like that.
That's good
Yeah.
too.
What's your favorite state you've ever been to?
I'm biased to Texas and I'm biased to California, but I think from a Montana, I'm gonna go with Montana.
Okay, what'd you go to Montana for?
I have driven through it a couple times, but last summer I was fortunate enough to accompany the Texas Youth Livestock and Agriculture group, which is like a group of high schoolers, on their domestic slash international trip. And we went through Montana on our way to Canada. and we did a lot of cool like agricultural stops in Montana. So it was very cool to see it through that lens.
Oh, that's awesome. Um, I was gonna ask you what your favorite commodity was, but I kind of have an idea.
Okay.
I'm gonna guess cattle and beef.
Yeah, I also love sweet corn because of where I'm from.
Okay. Yeah, is that one of California's more popular commodities?
Yes, and more specifically, like the exact location that I'm from in California is like very well known for our sweet corn.
Oh, that's pretty awesome. We don't have a lot of corn in Georgia or North Carolina.
You got a
Just
lot of
like a
chickens
little,
though.
yes, North Carolina and Georgia are both big on chickens, and Georgia's also like into peanuts, cattle, and then North Carolina, our main commodity is actually sweet potatoes and tobacco.
Yeah.
What's a skill in communications that you wish you were better at?
Mm. These are hard rapid fire questions. Goodness, I gotta think about these. Um, I think discussing difficult topics. Can that be an answer?
Like, do you mean like having those hard conversations like with consumers?
No, more so like it's a controversial topic. I wish I could just like say how I feel in an eloquent way. Like sometimes I'm worried about how things are going to come off. So I overthink it and then I just don't talk about it.
Oh yeah, that's totally understandable. I think a lot of us struggle with that because we have very strong opinions and we struggle to, we don't want to talk at that person who's debating quotes with us, but and we realize, oh, well, we're not taking their emotions and their stance into consideration as well. So I totally get that. I have conversations like that when I used to wait tables at the grocery store, and you really have to put yourself in their shoes so you can have that logical conversation with them and be educational and not, what's a good word? Forthcoming, very like blunt, I guess.
Yeah, I get too emotional. I wish I could remove emotion out of those types of conversations sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. This one might be a little easier. What's your favorite breed of cattle?
Angus.
Okay. I my favorite is Simmental.
That's probably my top three.
Yeah. Okay. If you weren't working in agriculture, what career do you think you would be in right now?
I think I would something I think potentially I have two. I think a lawyer in some format or working for the DEA because I really like crime type investigation things.
Oh, that is cool. What's your favorite crime show?
Oh, that's also a great question. See, I have so many. That's what I'm struggling with here.
Yeah.
This is probably the worst rapid fire I've ever done, so I apologize. Um, one of my favorite, and this is why I say DEA. This is probably horrible of me to say, but organized crime fascinates me. So like cartels and things like that is just it's crazy to me how they can get away with things for as long as they do. So
Right.
the like those types of shows are very intriguing to me. So like any documentaries kind of surrounding those or Narcos was really one of my favorites on Netflix several years ago. But I also really like Suits, which kind of plays into the lawyer side of things too, maybe.
Yeah. I will never put any show over Criminal Minds.
That's a
Like that is
classic.
my favorite. Okay. I think that's all I have for you today. I know this was kind of like a shorter episode, but we're testing the waters, we're dipping our toes in. Do you have any other advice or comments that you would like to give to our listeners?
I think, this goes back to something I said in the beginning as far as being curious. I think if you approach most things in life with curiosity and like a willingness to learn, it'll get you very far and kind of combine that with some work ethic. It's going to put you light years above maybe some of your peers. But also, if you are curious, like I was just saying, about anything that I could potentially help you with, please feel free to reach out. I love helping people navigate kind of what they might be dealing with. So thank you so much for having me on. It was an honor. And I hope if anyone is listening and they need something, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Yes, it was great to speak to you as well, Allie. I'll be sure to link your information that you would prefer people to contact you with in the bio of this episode as well. So if you want to reach out to Allie, go check that out. And I think that's all we have for today. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to The Actual Story. Be sure to subscribe and share so you never miss an episode. Until next time, keep telling agriculture's actual story.